Hello, Wellspring. I'm here with Sayla today. She's going to do the reading with us. Angle this camera down a little better so you can see her. We're reading from Genesis chapter 21. This is our reading from January 12th. We're reading in the NIV, and today we're reading out of Sayla's Bible, so it's pink. Check that out. Pretty cool. Is that exciting? You're being a little bashful? That's all right. Okay, here we go. Genesis chapter 21. Now the Lord was gracious to Sarah, as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the very time God had promised him. Abraham gave the name Isaac to the son Sarah bore. When his son Isaac was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him, as God commanded. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Sarah said, God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me. And she added, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse a child? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. The child grew and was weaned, and on the day Isaac was weaned, Abraham held a great feast. But Sarah saw that the son whom Hagar the Egyptian had borne to Abraham was mocking. And she said to Abraham, get rid of that slave woman and her son, for that woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son. The matter distressed Abraham greatly, because it concerned his son. But God said to him, do not be distressed about the boy and your slave woman. Listen to whatever Sarah tells you, because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. I will make the son of the slave into a nation also, because he is your offspring. Early the next morning, Abraham took some food and a skin of water and gave it to them, Hagar and Ishmael. He set them on her shoulders and then sent her off with the boy. She went on her way and wandered in the desert of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she put the boy under one of the bushes. Then she went off and sat down about a bow shot away, for she thought, I cannot watch the boy die. And as she sat there, she began to sob. God heard the boy crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what is the matter, Hagar? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Lift the boy up, take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. So she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. God was with the boy as he grew up. He lived in the desert and became an archer. While he was living in the desert of Paran, his mother got a wife for him from Egypt. At that time, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of Abimelech's forces, said to Abraham, God is with you in everything that you do. Now swear to me here before God that you will not deal falsely with me, or my children, or my descendants. Show to me in the country where you now reside as a foreigner the same kindness I've shown to you. Abraham said, I swear it. Then Abraham complained to Abimelech about a well of water that Abimelech's servants had seized. But Abimelech said, I don't know who's done this. You did not tell me, and I heard about it only today. So Abraham brought sheep and cattle and gave them to Abimelech, and the two men made a treaty. Abraham set apart 7 ewe lambs from the flock, and Abimelech asked Abraham, what is the meaning of the 7 ewe lambs you've set apart by themselves? He replied, accept these 7 lambs from my hand as a witness that I dug this well. So that place was called Beersheba, because the 2 men swore an oath there. After the treaty had been made at Beersheba, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his forces, returned to the land of the Philistines. Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba, and there he called on the name of the Lord, the eternal God. And Abraham stayed in the land of the Philistines for a long time. So I think there's some interesting things for us to reflect on and talk about from that chapter. Remember when the angel's promise to Sarah that she was going to have a baby and she laughed? Do you remember that from our reading the other day? And said, "How could I have a baby? I'm too old." I know Hadessa was with me, but so Sarah laughed at that, and now we get this scripture that talks about how Sarah, having been given the promised son Isaac, the child of promise that God said He would reckon Abraham's descendants through. Now that child was there, Sarah says, "Now everyone will laugh at me, and everyone will laugh with me because I've had this child in my old age. And who would have thought that Abraham and Sarah could have had a child in my old age? So Isaac was a miracle baby that was given to them. I just think it's interesting that Sarah laughs at the promises of God at first, and then when they're delivered, she laughs for a different reason. The first laughing is a scoffing or a disbelief, and the second laughing is the joy of the Lord falling upon her because of the gift of her son. And Scripture says laughter works good like a medicine. It's incredible, though, how different laughter can be and the different intentions of it, the different purposes of it. And I just think it's a beautiful picture of the redemption that happens in Sarah's life and in her journey, where at first she's laughing at God and she's laughing at his promises. And she's even lying about laughing at those promises. And now she's moved into a space where God has fulfilled his word and been faithful in spite of her doubt. And in the middle of that faithfulness, she finds herself overwhelmed with joy. And so she laughs. And then we get the second part of the story that begins to deal with Abraham's son Ishmael, who he had with the slave woman Hagar. And if you recall, Hagar had been given to Abraham by Sarah as a potential way to fulfill God's promise, because Sarah had even doubted still that God would fulfill this promise. And so she had given the slave woman to Abraham so that they could have a child through Hagar, Ishmael. And then now here she sits, having tried to control things in her own way and do it in her own time. And God has fulfilled his purposes in his time and his plan. And she's dealing with the repercussions of trying to go in front of God's plan and trying to circumnavigate God's path. And Ishmael is mocking Isaac and mocking Sarah and making fun of them for being so old and having a child. And yet he's still a child of Abraham. And so Sarah says, get rid of this boy, get rid of his mother. And Abraham's brokenhearted. He's like, that's my son. I don't want to get rid of him. But God says to Abraham, don't worry, because he is your son, I will still give him blessing. I will still turn him into a great nation. And so Abraham sends off Hagar and Ishmael, and they wander around in the desert. Ishmael's on the verge of dying because he doesn't have water. And the angel of the Lord shows up to Hagar and says, I'm going to make your son into a great nation. I'm going to save his life. And I think it's a beautiful picture of God's goodness, of his faithfulness, of his kindness, and of his mercy. That even though this boy was born out of human decision and out of human intent, and it was an attempt to circumnavigate God's plan and God's path, God still chooses to bless Ishmael and to raise him up into a great nation and to spare his life, even though he's wandering in the desert. And I just think, how many times have we made decisions or done things outside of God's path or God's intention, and God has yet redeemed it? God has still made something beautiful out of something that was difficult. It's pretty cool, isn't it? Yeah. You said you didn't want to talk today. That's fine. You don't have to talk. Well, anyways, Wellspring, I just want to encourage you to trust that the Lord is in all of these things. And Scripture says to us that God works together all things for good for those who love him. And sometimes that's a mystery to us, and we have to wrestle with it. And we don't always see all of that good worked out, and we don't always know exactly how it's going to come to pass. But our God is merciful and gracious. You have a great day. God bless you.